Picture this. It's early January, the holidays are finally over, and you check your mailbox expecting nothing but bills or junk mail. But instead, there it is. An official letter from the Social Security Administration dated January 3rd. No emojis, no marketing language, just that unmistakable SSA envelope. And suddenly your stomach drops. Because for millions of Americans, this letter is not routine, and ignoring it could cost you money, benefits, or peace of mind. Here's the truth most people don't realize. When the SSA sends out mass letters at the very start of the year, it's usually tied to important changes, reviews, or required actions involving Social Security, SSI, or SSDI benefits. Sometimes it's about payment adjustments, sometimes it's about eligibility verification, and sometimes it's a warning that something in your file doesn't match their records anymore. The scary part? Many people assume it's just informational, toss it aside, and only realize weeks later that their benefits are delayed, reduced, or temporarily stopped. This January notice is especially critical because it's landing right as new annual rules, payment calculations, and income thresholds take effect. What's written inside that envelope could directly affect how much money you receive, or whether your payments continue without interruption. And if you don't respond in time, the consequences can be hard to reverse. So before you ignore that letter, before you assume it doesn't apply to you, you need to know exactly why the SSA is sending these notices, who should be most concerned, and what steps you may need to take immediately. If this information matters to you or someone you love, make sure you like this video right now, so more Americans see this before it's too late. Now let's talk about what's really happening and why these Social Security letters arriving around January 3rd are causing so much confusion, anxiety, and in some cases panic among Americans who depend on these monthly payments to survive. Every year, the Social Security Administration sends out millions of notices, but this batch is different because of the timing, the volume, and the changes taking effect right as the new year begins. When a letter arrives this early in January, it's almost never random, and it's rarely something you can afford to ignore. For many people, Social Security isn't extra money. It's not spending cash. It's rent, it's groceries, it's prescriptions, it's the electric bill. So when the SSA reaches out directly, especially right after the holidays, it's usually because something in your record needs attention or confirmation. Sometimes the letter is informational, but other times it requires action, and the problem is that the language used by the SSA can feel intimidating, confusing, or overly technical. That's why so many people either set the letter aside or assume it doesn't apply to them, and that's exactly where trouble starts. One of the most common reasons these January letters are being sent is related to annual benefit adjustments and verification reviews. At the start of every year, the SSA updates income thresholds, eligibility criteria, and internal records. If you receive SSI or SSDI, the SSA often needs to confirm that your income, living situation, or disability status hasn't changed. Even a small discrepancy, like reported income that doesn't match IRS data or a change of address that wasn't fully processed, can trigger a notice. And while that may sound minor, failing to respond can result in delayed or temporarily suspended payments. Another major reason these letters are going out has to do with overpayment reviews. This is one of the most stressful situations beneficiaries face. The SSA may believe that at some point you were paid more than you should have been, sometimes due to outdated income information or reporting delays that were completely out of your control. The letter might explain that the SSA is reviewing your payment history or that they believe an overpayment occurred. What many people don't realize is that these notices often come with deadlines, and missing those deadlines can mean automatic deductions from future checks. There are also letters related to Medicare coordination, which affects millions of Americans receiving Social Security. Changes in Medicare premiums, enrollment status, or eligibility for extra help programs can all trigger a notice. For retirees and disabled individuals on fixed incomes, even a small increase in Medicare premiums can significantly impact monthly finances. These letters may explain adjustments that will be reflected in upcoming payments, and if you don't understand what's changing, you could be caught off guard when your deposit is lower than expected. For SSI recipients, January letters are especially important because SSI rules are strict and sensitive to changes in income and household composition. If someone moved in or out of your household, if you received temporary financial help, or if your bank balance crossed certain limits, the SSA may want clarification. The letter may ask for documentation or confirmation, and ignoring it can lead to benefit interruption. The frustrating part is that many of these situations are easily resolved if addressed quickly, but they become much harder to fix once payments stop. SSDI recipients are also seeing an increase in letters related to continuing disability reviews. These reviews are part of the SSA's process to confirm that beneficiaries still meet medical eligibility requirements. A January notice may indicate that a review is scheduled or that additional information is needed. This doesn't automatically mean your benefits are ending, but it does mean the SSA expects a response. The fear and uncertainty surrounding these letters often come from not knowing what's being asked or how serious the situation really is. Retirees collecting Social Security retirement benefits are not immune either. Some letters address tax withholding elections, benefit recalculations, or changes based on updated earnings records. If you worked part-time or returned to work, even briefly, the SSA may be adjusting your benefits accordingly. In some cases, the adjustment could actually increase your payment, but only if the SSA has accurate information. That's why reading the letter carefully is so important. What makes this January 3rd wave of letters particularly concerning is that many people are still in recovery mode from the holidays. Mail piles up, attention is divided, and scammers know this. Unfortunately, fraud attempts often increase around the same time legitimate SSA notices are sent. That's why it's critical to distinguish real SSA correspondence from scams while still taking legitimate letters seriously. A real SSA letter will never demand immediate payment through gift cards or threaten arrest, but it may warn of benefit changes if you don't respond by a certain date. The key thing to understand is that ignoring a legitimate SSA letter does not make the issue go away. In fact, it almost always makes it worse. The SSA operates on timelines and automated processes. If a response isn't received, the system often moves forward with assumptions that are not in your favor. Payments can be reduced, suspended, or flagged, and fixing those problems can take weeks or even months. If you've already received one of these letters, the first step is to read it slowly and completely. It may feel overwhelming, but most SSA letters clearly state why they're contacting you and what they need. Sometimes it's as simple as confirming information or submitting a short form. Other times, you may need to provide documentation or contact your local Social Security office. The important thing is not to delay. If you haven't received a letter yet, but you receive Social Security, SSI, or SSDI, this is still something to pay attention to. Not everyone receives notices at the same time, and mail delivery can vary. It's also possible to receive notices electronically if you have a My Social Security account. Checking your account online can help you stay ahead of any issues and confirm whether the SSA is trying to reach you. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that because their payments have been steady for years, nothing can change. But Social Security rules are constantly updated and records are regularly reviewed. Even long-term beneficiaries can be affected by system updates, data matching with the IRS, or changes in federal policy. That's why staying informed and proactive is so important. Another issue tied to these January letters is cost of living adjustments and benefit recalculations. While many people expect increases at the start of the year, the actual amount can vary depending on individual circumstances. The SSA may send a notice explaining how your new benefit amount was calculated. If something doesn't look right, addressing it quickly can prevent long-term issues. For those who receive benefits on behalf of someone else, such as a representative payee managing payments for a child or disabled adult, these letters are especially critical. The SSA often requires periodic confirmation that funds are being used appropriately and that the beneficiary's situation hasn't changed. Failure to respond can jeopardize benefits for the person you're helping. The emotional toll of receiving an SSA letter shouldn't be underestimated. For many Americans, Social Security represents stability in an unpredictable world. A single envelope can trigger fear about losing that stability. That's why it's important to approach these notices with clarity rather than panic. Most issues can be resolved, but only if they're addressed. As January moves forward, more people will start talking about these letters, sharing experiences, and sometimes spreading misinformation. That's why it's crucial to rely on accurate information and official sources. If you're unsure about a letter's legitimacy, contacting the SSA directly using official phone numbers or visiting a local office can provide reassurance. Ultimately, these January 3rd Social Security letters are a reminder of how important it is to stay engaged with your benefits. They're not something to fear, but they are something to respect. The SSA isn't sending these notices to cause problems, but to update records, ensure compliance, and maintain program integrity. How you respond can make all the difference. So if you or someone you care about receives one of these letters, don't brush it off. Take it seriously, read it carefully, ask questions if needed, and act within the time frame given. Doing so can protect your benefits, your income, and your peace of mind. This information matters because Social Security affects millions of lives every single month. Staying informed is one of the best ways to protect yourself in a system that can feel complicated and overwhelming. And that's exactly why we're covering this now, before small issues turn into big problems. If you found this explanation helpful and want to stay updated on important Social Security news that could affect your money, your benefits, and your future, make sure you like this video so more Americans see it and stay informed.